Few challenges facing America are more urgent than combating climate change. The science is beyond dispute, and the facts are clear.
The science is beyond dispute. The facts are clear. Well, the facts aren't all that clear to me. Lots of people, though, trust President Obama and others who worry about global warming and want government to act. My next guest wants that, too. Bjorn Lomborg is a left-wing environmentalist who says the world is warming and government should spend your money to pay people to research green energy. So, one step at a time. The globe is warming. I mean, I agree, the globe's been warming, doesn't seem very arguable. But government should pay people to fund some new form of green energy?
Let me just roll you back a little bit. First, spending lots and lots of money across the world on subsidizing inefficient green energy. That's stupid. We know
we agree that's stupid.
That solar panels or windmills are not effective right now.
Which is where most of the money goes.
Absolutely.
We're vomiting money at solar panels and windmills.
Absolutely. Germany actually just stopped because they've been paying so much and gotten so little out of it. But what we should learn then is to say, all right, if it is a problem, and I think the science clearly says this is one of the many problems, it's the catastrophe that's been sold us, but it is a problem. What we should do is to make sure that green energy eventually becomes cheaper than fossil fuels. Because if it does, everyone will switch. Not because we're green or because we're forced to, but because we have found cheaper green energy. And that we can do through research.
All right, so the private sector will research that. If it's better, if there's a way to make it better, they will do it. Why does government have to use force to take money from me to pick the researchers?
Fundamentally because of the same reason we do this in medical sciences. When the advances are so far ahead, 20 to 40 years from now, we'll be able to have cheap green energy. We will have huge societal benefits, but we won't be able to actually reap them. If you're the company...
We might have huge societal benefits.
Absolutely. But remember, that's the same thing we do for medical research. We have lots of researchers, doing Nobel stuff. Interesting stuff, but stuff that you actually turn into actual paying products before decades have gone on.
So the private sector won't pay for it because of that?
Because, see, for instance, solar panels are 4 times as expensive as fossil fuels right now. So if you're the great guy who comes up with this amazing idea to half that cost, you still can't sell solar panels. But getting that innovation obviously would be incredibly helpful to the world. So if we spend a tiny money on research and development, we can actually have a great benefit.
Let me break that. When you say we spend, and a tiny bit, well, it's probably billions of dollars, but tiny bit compared to what they waste on windmills.
Absolutely.
All right. We means some bureaucrat working for President Obama who says, oh, I think this is a good idea. I'm going to fund this. Well, why would we trust that?
Well, clearly, we shouldn't trust the guys who, for instance, paid $500 million to Solyndra.
Right.
That's a very, very...
But these are the guys in charge.
But look, what they did, and what a lot of politicians, not just the Democrats, but a lot of politicians like to do, is to fund big projects that look great, that gives you a media opportunity. But what you should be funding is what we've been doing in medical research and many other places, namely cheap researchers through the National Science Foundation grants. Those are not very controversial, and those are very, very cheap. So instead of spending $500 million on Solyndra, you should spend $500,000 on researchers looking at, for instance, whether Solyndra's idea was good.
You say we should research these things because global warming, and many climatologists agree with you, is a real threat. Man probably has a big effect.
It's a big problem, not a threat, but yeah.
All right, so the alarm is the hysteria that gets to me, and my president seems to have accepted that alarmism. Here's what he said to staters.
Sea levels are rising. Coastlines are shrinking. We've seen record drought, spreading famine, and storms that are growing stronger with each passing hurricane season.
Sea levels are rising. Coastlines are shrinking. This sounds terrifying, but in truth, worldwide, over the last 100 years, 6 to 8 inches increase. Yeah. We adjust.
Absolutely.
So let's just adjust. Isn't that enough?
And of course, that's what we should be focusing on. You have to be smart about this and say, this is mostly an issue of adaptation. But of course, in the long run, we'd also like to not keep the Earth warming and keep the sea levels rising. So let's find it, but find it cheap in investing in research and development.
President Obama also talked about spreading famine. Oh. The famine isn't spreading. In fact, people are finding new ways to grow more food.
Global warming will mean we produce more food in the first world.
Good.
Yes, in the U.S., where more warmth will actually be a good thing, but it will be a problem in the third world. So we have to make sure we have adequate free trade of food, because otherwise the third world won't be able to get to it.
The last point, that President said storms that are growing stronger with each passing hurricane season. It's just not true.
Now, what we know is that we've seen increased damages from hurricanes over the last 100 years.
Because more people build on the edges of oceans.
Absolutely, and they have much more expensive homes. If you actually adjust for that, there's no tendency. Now, global warming probably will do slight bit more damage. But of course, if you actually want to help people not being damaged, you should focus on adaptation in Florida. For instance, stop subsidizing insurance, which encourages people to build irresponsibly.
But we tend to spend more money on the people who the loudest.
Absolutely, and that's the big problem. What we should be focusing on is smart solutions.
And you have not bought the whole catechism of your fellow leftists, and for doing that, they despise you. You've been thrown out of the club.
And I think this is the real problem about global warming, and quite frankly, a lot of other issues, that there is such a polarization in the conversation. It's either the end of the world or it's not happening at all. But what we need to find is a pragmatic middle. Yes, global warming is real. It's not the end of the world. Let's fix it, but fix it smartly.
And part of warming might be a nice thing. Fewer people die in warm spells than cold spells.
Absolutely. Listen, I come from Denmark. We're probably going to like the fact that temperatures rise. But remember, many places in the third world, where it's already pretty darn warm, are not going to like this. So we should accept the fact that we'll probably be well off by limiting the amount of temperature rise.
Thank you, Bjorn Lomborg. His book is Cool It, the skeptical environmentalist guide to climate change. Next, conspiracies. I don't trust my government, but some people don't even believe that this was real. They say America faked the moon landing. Conspiracies when we return.